Now we can start.
Okay. Thank you, Pratiksha. Good evening, everyone, and welcome for the online NET GSET Mentoring Lecture Series 2021, specifically organized by the Alumni Association of Department of English and Comparative Literary Studies, Saurashtra University. Till now, we had gone through 33 lecture sessions and we have almost covered the Western literature as well as criticism. Since last session, we have moved towards Indian discussion, right? Indian write-ups and at the same time Indian criticism. We started with English in India, history, evolution, and future. And we had with us Dr. Chirag Adatya in the last session. And as there was so much to discuss and it was not possible to cover up in single session, we had requested him to carry on for this next session. And so we have again with us Dr. Chirag Adatya on the same topic, that is English in India, history, evolution, and future. In the last session, we had a brief about Sir, right? So I'm not going to repeat once again in detail, but obviously I would like to mention that Sir has cleared NET and SET both, and at the same time, presently, he is specifically focused on guiding students for such competitive exams. So I think we would have a great, worth listening session from him. So I request now Dr. Chirag Adatya to kindly take over the session. Please, sir.
Thank you so much, Komal Didi, Parth sir, Pratiksha ma'am, and good evening to all the aspirants present. Nice to see you all once again. So today we are going to continue with the same topic that we started in the last session. The topic is English in India, history, evolution, and future. So in this topic, we are trying to discuss how English language has entered in India and specifically how the English education was spread all over India and what is the present or current status of English language in India. So before we, so like there are so many committees have been formed to evaluate the status of English, whether it is implemented properly or not. And every time there are some new suggestions and recommendations given by each and every committee. So in the last lecture also, like we have gone through several committees. And before we move forward, I would just like to recall few things. And if you know something or if you remember few things, you can also give your answer. You can also text in the chat box. So first of all, we started with the English language entered in India with the coming of East India Company. Then there were like missionary schools all over the India who tried to convert Indians into Christianity while teaching them English language. And then we have the first blueprint written in 1792, which was about the English education in India. And who was that scholar who wrote this first blueprint? If anybody remembers, you can text in the chat box. Yes, Kamalji, that was Charles Grant, who was the first scholar who wrote about the first blueprint about the English education in India. Then in 1813, we have the first East India Company Act, because by the time East India Company decided to continue their business or to continue the English education in India for more 20 years. I'm sorry. So they introduced and what did they do? They officially the grant to spread the English education, and that was 1 lakh rupees. Then we have the Macaulay's Minute in 1935. in 1835. And in this Macaulay's Minute, he emphasized on giving or using those educational grant only and only for the purpose of English education. He was very much, he opposed the vernacular languages, and it was full of rhetorical languages. Then we have the Wood's Dispatch, because in Macaulay's Minute, what happened? That in Macaulay's Minute, he was like very much rude, and he used that kind of language that it was difficult to understand. So Wood's Dispatch, written by Charles Wood, it was easy to understand, and he focused on English education as well as vernacular languages. Then we have the Indian Universities Commission, which was primarily formed to see the reforms happening in the Indian universities. And then there are two resolutions, 1904 resolution and 1913 resolution. In 1904, it was said that English education should not be taught as a first language. It should not be used as a language of instruction, but the learner should be given the opportunity to make their fundamentals clear in the first language. And then we have 1913 resolution, in which compulsory primary education has been introduced. And who was the person who made the efforts to who recommended the government? He was the Gopal Krishna Gokhale. He said, he put the proposal to the government that the primary education should be made compulsory in India. And initially the government rejected the proposal, but afterwards it was accepted. So these were some of the the aspects that we have already discussed in the previous session. Now we will continue with the further some more committees. Just give me a minute. I'm just going to share my screen. Just a minute. Yes, this was the last topic that we were discussing. Compulsory primary education was introduced with the resolution in the University Commission Act in 1913. Is my screen visible to all of you?
Yes, Chirag, it's visible.
Okay, thank you. So then we have the Calcutta University Commission, which came out in 1917, and Michael Sadler, he was the chairman of this particular commission, and at that time he was vice chancellor of University of Leeds, and that is why it is also known as Sadler Commission. Now their focus was basically to reform, to inspect the education system that was taught in the Calcutta University, and it was found that the education which was given in the Calcutta University, which was found defective, and that is why this commission was formed to inspect and to give some recommendations and reformations in the existing education system. And whatever the suggestions have been given, which were also applicable to other universities as well, but primarily the focus was only and only on Calcutta University. And this commission pointed out that there is a mismatch between whatever suggestions are given by the government, whatever the policies suggested by the government, and the actual implementation. And they also said that they again reiterated the importance of mother tongue. They said that this commission said that the mother tongue is actually the complementary. It cannot be replaced. So they did not emphasize only and only on English education, but they said that both are complementary to each other. These are some of the important recommendations given by Calcutta University Commission. They gave importance on mother tongue education along with the economically, some they said that for the educational development the funds should be raised, and particularly in the high school examination the students should be allowed to write the answers in vernacular language also. Like it should not be compulsory that they have to write the answers only in English, but they gave the two options. Those students who are not comfortable in English, they can also write their answers in vernacular. And phonetic method should be employed in teaching English. So these are some of the important suggestions given by Calcutta University Commission. Then we have some more committees that we will see very quickly. We have the Simon Commission. Now, the Simon Commission, which was appointed in 1928, about make the inquiry about the overall development of the education, the implementation of the education policies. Now, what did they do? This Simon Commission, they again appointed one more committee because they were not Simon Commission, which was not in a position to prepare the report, or they were not in a position to report everything, so they wanted some help. So again they appointed Hartog Commission, and that is why this is very important for the sake of examination. There can be a question that which commission or which committee is known as auxiliary committee. So the answer is Hartog Committee, because it was appointed for the helping hand, because Simon Commission was not in a position to do alone. That is why this Hartog committee is also known as auxiliary committee, and the chairman was Sir Philip Hartog. Now they focused on they reviewed the educational system of primary level, secondary and university level, and they suggested few things for the enhancement of the quality, and they suggested that English should be compulsory second language. It should be compulsory, but it should be taught as a second language. So again, it should not be replaced by the vernacular. Afterwards, we have the next is Abbott Wood Committee that was appointed in 1936 and 7. There were two experts from England, Mr. Abbott and Mr. Wood. They have been appointed to study some problems and to give their suggestions. Now they gave two types of suggestions, technical and general. They said that now these two scholars, English scholars, they visited India, and particularly they visited some places like Delhi, Uttar Pradesh and Punjab. And after making some inquiries and observations, they suggested that technical education should be directly linked with agriculture and industry. So there should be more like practical exposure should be given. And very important thing is there were not any action taken about these recommendations given by Mr. Wood, given by this Mr. Abbott and Mr. Wood. And what can be the reason? The reason is because this report was prepared during 1936 to 1937. So by the time they prepared the report in 1939, we have the Second World War was broke out, and that is why it was not implemented. This policy was, or these suggestions were not taken into consideration. Afterwards, in 1937, we have Zakir Hussain Committee, and their basic purpose was to introduce basic education. Now, when you listen the word basic education, there is one name that comes in our mind, and that is Gandhiji. It was Gandhiji who talked about basic education in 1937 in Harijan. He wrote about this concept. And what did he mean by basic education? He said that basic education is not only about making a person to write, read, and speak, but he emphasized more on the development of mind and spirit. So, kind of holistic development. A person should be able to stand on his own feet. He should not be, he should be a bold, a fearless person. And that is was the concept of basic education given by Mahatma Gandhi. In October 1937, there was one conference in the city called Wardha under the presidency of Mahatma Gandhi. And during this conference, Gandhiji appointed one committee and Dr. Zakir Hussain was appointed as the chairman. And that is why it is also known as Wardha scheme of education. Because it was actually, there was a conference of many scholars, educationists at Wardha. And whatever was the output, after the discussion and lots of discussion, they prepared a committee and they decided or they proposed 7 years plan for basic education. Some of the important features are like free and compulsory education till 7 years. So primary education should be free. The medium of education is mother tongue. So what here we can observe is again and again, if we observe all these committees, the importance is given on the vernacular. Even though English is very important and English should be there, but it should be taught as a second language. Then there is some like suggestions, like there is the emphasis on some manual works like spinning, weaving, and gardening for the sake of physical development, not only the mental development, but Gandhiji himself was practicing this kind of activities. And that is why he suggested, or this committee, Dr. Zakir Hussain committee, they gave this type of suggestion. Then we have the Sargent report, which came out in 1944. So this is the post-war. By the 1944, the Second World War came to end. And the Central Advisory Board of Education in India, they published a report to prepare or to make a plan to action about the post-war educational development in India. And John Sargent, he was the main chairman or the advisor, and that is why he prepared this report, which came to be known as the Sargent report. Now, during this time, for the very first time, it was suggested that basic education should comprise of 8 years instead of 7 years, because earlier Dr. Zakir Hussain committee suggested that it is 7 years, but this John Sargent, he said that it should be of 5 plus 3, but this proposal was not accepted. Let us move forward. Now, when India got independence and afterwards Britishers went, and there were formally there was an establishment of UGC in 1953, and there were some there were national educational policies. there are this is the 2020. This is the fourth education policy. Before that, there were three national education policies have been introduced. So the first was 1968. And what is the main highlight about this, the first policy? During that time, they decided to make the system very uniform. So they introduced the structure of 10 plus 2 plus 3. That is, in the first mod, comprises of primary education and high school education, then 2 years for the higher secondary and the graduation. So this was the structure. It was actually introduced in 1968 when the first national education policy was introduced. And this suggestion was actually given by the Kothari Commission, the structure 10 plus 2 plus 3. But it was introduced during this time. And they also gave the 3-language formula, this first education policy. That they said Hindi, Sanskrit, and one international language should be taught. So that what we have been following still today in the primary and high school education. Then we have the second policy, which came out in 1986. So their basic aim was to open more and more number of schools in rural areas and to promote education, to make the education more qualitative. So basic aim is to open or to cover the rural areas. So the kids, they should not commute to the other cities, but the education should be there itself in the small villages. Then after, in 1989, we have the Curriculum Development Center, which was set up by UGC. And this center was specifically built up for the make the reformations or the preparing the curriculum for the universities. And they suggested that English should be taught as a compulsory subject or as a foundation subject in all the courses, BA, whether it is BA, BCom, BSc. And they also suggested some evaluations method like peer evaluations, self-appraisal systems. So these has been some of the important suggestions given by Curriculum Development Center. Afterwards, we have Acharya Ramamurthy Commission, which was established in 1990. And their purpose was, this commission was established basically to review or to supervise the second national education policy, the education policy of national education policy of 1986, and especially to study or to observe that whether that 3-language formula, that is Hindi, Sanskrit, and international language, whether that is successful or not. And they also emphasized on the criteria that the curriculum should not be delivered on the yearly basis, but on the basis of hours of the study. Hours of the study. They specified that this topic should be taught within these many hours. So this is the Acharya Ramamurthy Commission. So we are going chronologically. So that becomes very easier to remember. Starting from the beginning, 1872, when we have the first blueprint. Okay. Now let us come to the very recent Education Policy 2020. Many of you might be aware because there has been so many webinars on this during the pandemic, during the lockdown, sorry. So let us discuss some of the very important highlights, because there can be even I did not take the exam, last exam, net examination, but I took the feedback or review from some other candidates who appeared, and there were one or two questions from this topic, 2020 policy. So National Education Policy 2020 basically aims to making India a global knowledge superpower. And the cabinet has approved the renaming of the Ministry of Human Resource Development, that is HRDC, to the Ministry of Education. So renaming. Now HRDC will be called Ministry of Education. And their main focus is to reduce the rote learning. That rattabaji is not going to help. The education, there should be to make the person should be able to earn. He should be employed after the graduation, because nowadays there is a lots of problems. The students are very highly educated, but there is no employment. So they are focusing more on making the education practical. There should be more and more practicals in the laboratories, field visits, industrial visits. This kind of things are introduced. And one very important thing is no hard separation of streams. Right now, it is like a system is very rigid. We have arts, commerce, and science. So once you complete your 10th standard, then you have to decide what you want to become. Whether you want to become a doctor, then you have to take a medical education, you have to take the science stream, commerce and arts. But sometimes it happens that, like for example, as being a student of arts, I am also interested to study economics. I am also interested in accountancy. So now it is possible. As per this education policy, this rigidity will be removed. So there is no hard separation of streams. Like for example, a student of commerce, he can also study drama, he can also study physics. So he can select the subjects as per his choice now. Now, we will discuss some of the important changes that have been made in school education and higher education. First of all, we will begin with the school education. So up till now, the structure was like 10 plus 2 plus 3. That is now replaced with the structure of new structure 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4. So what happened here is actually they are also covering, because earlier a kid, the formal education was considered from the age of 5 or 6. A kid can enter into KG, lower KG, when he is 5 years old. But now the 3 to 5 years is also formally considered as a part of the formal education, because the kid who is very younger, because they are their grasping power is good. So during these years, 3 to 5 years, there can be more grasping, and they can mentally they can be more powerful. That is why it is also considered in this structure. And their planning is to make the 100% gross enrollment ratio, to increase the ratio by 2030. Right now already we can see that now, as the primary education is free, and in India we can see that it is already good. The education ratio is already good, but government is planning to make it 100%. by the year 2013. Now, class 10 and 12 exams, board examinations to be made easier, to test core competencies rather than memorized facts, with all students allowed to take the examination twice. So they are making the things easier to remove this rattabaji and memorization. And vocational education is given importance. It should be introduced when the kid is in class 6. So there should be intensive practical knowledge, and whatever is taught theoretically, there should be the practical knowledge of the same topic. Teaching up to grade 5 to be mother tongue, or it should be in a regional language. So no language will be imposed on any student. But again, it does not mean the replacement of English, because there is a misunderstanding among the people. But it is said that the fundamentals should be clear. Once a kid is clear about all the fundamentals, then we can introduce the English. So these are some of the important things, important futures given in the school education systems, reformations in the school education systems. Then we have the higher education, some important changes suggested. So right now, what is the higher education ratio? Current is something like 27 or something, because there is a lot of dropout ratio is higher, because many students do not complete graduation. Some of them leave in the first year, or some of them leave after the second year. So they are planning to raise it by 50% by 2035, and also 3.5 crore seats to be added in higher education. So the number of seats in higher education, they are planning to increase. Then one very important thing about this higher education system is multiple exit options. Now this is very good. Like up till now, like what was the system? Like if the student, due to some problems, due to some domestic responsibility or some personal matters, if they are not in a position to complete graduation, then whatever they pursued, whatever the study they taken for 2 years or 1 year, it is not going to be counted. Like if you do not have the mark sheet of graduation, you are not eligible to apply anywhere. Like minimum qualification is graduation for most of the recruitments, basic recruitments, class 4 or class 3 level. But now it will not be like that. Now even if you complete 1 year, you will be given a degree, like a certificate course. If you complete 2 years, then you will be given a diploma certificate. And if you complete all 3 years, then you will be given a degree certificate. So there are multiple exit options are available. Like if you do not want to complete 3 years, it is fine. You can start job after 2 years. So this is very beneficial to the students. But let us see now how it will be implemented. It will take few years. Then one very, we can say that MPhil is discontinued, MPhil program. I don't know the reasons why, because actually it was very good. A person like, many of us are already having the MPhil degree, and now when we are applying for this granting and recruitments, and it is not going to be counted. Like only if you have PhD and MPhil both, then only PhD will be considered. And in near future, it will be totally discontinued, this program. So actually it was very good. It was the basic, I think. Those who wanted to pursue PhD program, for them, this was very useful. But I think why this is removed, like now, the research methodology paper itself is introduced in MA program. Earlier, we did not have research methodology. And now, the research project or dissertation are given to the students in MA itself. So now research is very given importance when the students are in the post graduation itself. Then multidisciplinary education and research universities will be established at par with the IITs and IIMs to be set up as a models of best multidisciplinary education of global standard in the country. So again, to enhance the quality of education and given importance on multidisciplinary education, and research is also given more importance. Now, one important aspect thing is Higher Education Commission of India will be now set up as a single umbrella body under the entire higher education. Right now, we have separate bodies, like for technical education, we have separate bodies. For arts, for humanities, we have different bodies. But now there will be a common umbrella body under the single name. So these are some of the important changes that have been suggested in higher education system. Now we are coming to the end, and these are, if you want to know more about this topic, if you are interested to do some more research into this topic, I have here mentioned the names of few books. These are very important books. This can be asked in examination also sometimes, that so and so books is written by whom. So for examination sake also this is important, and if you want to explore more, then also you can refer all these books. Let us read it quickly. English in India, its present future, 1964, written by V.K. Gokak. The second one, Moving Frontiers of English Studies in India, 1977, written by C.D. Narasimhaiah. Then third one is Pigeon Indian, Some Notes on Indian English Writing, 1982, by Mulk Raj Anand. Then we have very important figure, Braj Kachru. He is very important. His book, The Indianization of English, came out in 1983. The next one is Masks of Conquest by Gauri Viswanathan, published in 1990. Then The Rhetoric of English Indian, 1992, which is by Sara Suleri. There are some more, Problematizing English in India by R.K. Agnihotri and A.L. Khanna. And the next one is The Story of English in India, about which I was also talking last time. Somebody was asking that which book. Now, out of these many books, I referred this book, the last one. I have gone through this book and I prepared this session, or I have prepared this topic based on this book. And I have also prepared some kind of 35 to 40 pages material that is very important for the NET exam, and I am going to share that PDF with all of you. The book is Story of English in India, published in 2006 and written by N. Krishnamurthy and Lalita Krishnamurthy. Now this is the old edition, I think. This picture I have this cover page I have taken from the Google, but the book with green cover, blue and green cover, that I am having right now, that is the new edition, but the books are same. So these are some of the books. Then these are some of the varieties of English in India. Many times there are questions and MCQs in exam from this. So let us quickly discuss about it. The first one is Butler English, or it is also known as Kitchen English. Now what is this? This butler English, the word itself, you see, butler means servant. So during the time of when the Britishers were ruling in India, at that time, the butlers who were serving in the houses of English people, they were known as high butlers, high servants, and they used to communicate in English with their masters, especially in the presidency of Madras, and that is known as butler English. And here, this English is particularly associated with the class rather than the profession, because it is used with a particular group, the servant and the master. And this English is very near to pidgin. Pidgin, you might have the familiar with this term. It is like, kind of, it is not a common English. It's not used by everybody. It is used between 2 or 3 groups, and it is very limited to limited number of vocabularies and limited usage of grammar. So this is called butler English or kitchen English. So there can be a question or MCQ that which of the following statements is not correct about butler English, right? Then we have black burqa. This black burqa is a kind of hybridization of 2 languages. Like here, the grammar or structure of one language is applied to the vocabulary of other language. There is a grammar or the sentence structure of another language is applied into the vocabulary of other. So it is the hybridization, and that is called black burqa. Then we have Babu English. This Babu English is a language particularly related with the occupational variety that was used by clerks during the pre-independence time, and they used to speak with their masters in too much politeness. They were using like English of very polite English, and used by clerks, and that is called Babu English. Then we have English. English is a mix-up of several languages, but within the same text. It is a mix-up of so many languages or several languages within the same text or within the same utterance. And some vernacular words have been introduced in foreign language. Like we have, pakka. Pakka I will come. So pakka, by when we say pakka, we have sure. We mean to say sure I will come. So there have been so many such words, vernacular words, which were introduced in English or in foreign language. So these are some of the important terms or some of the varieties of English. Now we are going to the last part of the session, that is the present status of English in India and what is the future of English. So now it is the globalization, and in the 19th and early 20th century or in the 19th century, there was a time when the life was basically it was family centric or village centric life, and that is why the communication was also limited. Like people used to communicate with a smaller group in villages or even in the semi-urban cities. They did not used to communicate with the larger group. But now, because of industrial revolution and information and development of information and technology, now there is a shift from village to city, and That is why the English language has become a global language. So now there is a English language. Now the people have started migrating into the cities, into the urban area, and now English is used into the daily jobs, in the offices, and that is why now it has become, it is used for the communication within the larger part. And there is one important scholar, David Crystal, who writes about the present status of English in his important book English as a Global Language in 1957. He gives some estimates about how many users are there of English. He mentioned in the book that there are uh, 337 million people who are using English as a first language. People in UK, England, and there are 350 million people who are using English as a second language, like in the countries of India, Pakistan, Malaysia, and there are 1.5 billion people. So all over the world, English is used as an international language also. So these are some of the estimates given by David Crystal. Then we have very important figure, Braj Kachru, who is Indian American linguist. He gave or he introduced three circle of English family. There are inner circle, outer circle, and expanding circle. Now this inner circle means the traditional basis of English, or where the English is used as the language one. It means the first language. For example, USA, UK. So that is called inner circle. Then the second circle is outer circle, in which outer circle is like, this is the phase where English was introduced for the purpose of business, trading purpose by the colonies, like in the countries like India and Nigeria. That is called outer circle. And then we have the expanding circle. So the larger part, the larger mass of the people, larger people, many number of people who are using English as an international language, like in the countries of China, Russia, Brazil, etc. It is called expanding circle. So Braj Kachru, he has introduced this concept. Sorry. He has introduced this concept on the basis of how the English has been introduced, or how, for what purpose English is used. Then, while concluding, I will just talk about the changing role of English. In 19th and early 20th century, English was more of class, race, and culture-based phenomenon. It was used by the upper class or the middle class, but now we see that English has become a very common. It has become a part of our daily life. Now everybody is speaking English because due to the development of technology, whatever technical gadgets that we are using, so English is there. Now it is used for international communication, and English as the language of the info age has become culture neutral. So now there is no it is no more a part of particular culture or a particular race, but now English is used by everybody. And if we see that when English was introduced, when the East India Company, with the coming of East India Company in 1600, so at that time, what was their purpose when it was introduced in India? At that time, it was to understand the literature of the world literature. People like Raja Ram Mohan Roy, Gandhiji, Debendranath Tagore, they all took English education because they wanted to understand the English culture. They wanted understand the literature. They wanted to read the world literature. So their basic focus was on culture and literature. But now this is changing. Now, if we observe the present status of English language in India or the future of English in India, now there is an emphasis on effective communication skills in English. I'm sorry. I was just getting one call, so I just disconnected. I'm sorry.
Okay.
So now
Chirag,
English is
sorry.
basically
Chirag, sorry to disturb, but
yes.
I mean it's already 6:50. So if possible,
Okay.
just conclude the thing so that we can have at least 10 minutes of discussion if they have some doubts.
Sure. I'm
Yes.
just giving some
Okay.
concluding remarks.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
Chirag.
So I'm talking about the present status. So what is now English is basically used for professional purposes in all the jobs, in offices. Like English is used for communication skills. So like uh, for writing, for preparing resume or writing some applications and preparing the minutes of meetings. So now this is the purpose of learning English for majority of the people in India. So now from literature and culture, English has taken the place of it is now communicative English is important. So from literature to professional purpose. So by with these I come to end. Thank you for listening me. Now it is the time we discuss some questions. Just a minute. I am coming now face to face. Yes.
Okay, that was again a great session with so many information. So now open the session for the discussion. So those students who have some kind of a queries or want to add up with the discussion, kindly just put on in the chat box.
Yes, please. Or
Yes.
if you have something to add, I mean whatever I have discussed, parts are there are like
Yes. Again,
Nitin
yes.
sir is there.
Yes, English is again something that we are all dealing with, maybe in the literature, or maybe a few people like me who is dealing with technical education. Then we are somewhere connected with English in different forms. So I think this is something that touches all of us. I mean, the topic. So, yes, do we have anything to add up even? On, if not, the queries?
Right.
Okay, it seems that people are still, just, grasping up the things that you have added today. But I have, a thing, I don't understand whether I would call it a question or something, but there is something that I always wonder. If you can guide me some in that way. When we teach students, okay. Before I speak out, we have a question from Nitin sir. He is asking if you can give some example of Burkha English.
Burkha English. I don't have the particular words or examples right now. I'm sorry to say. I can't recall or I haven't collected. So I can't give, but it's a hybridization of several languages.
Okay.
Yes, Komaditi, you were saying something, yes? Hmm.
Yes. Actually, I just wanted to ask that when we are teaching our students about, in the technical education, we do not have much emphasis on literature, but we are more towards teaching them the language, and we actually quite give emphasis to the correct pronunciation. This should be pronounced like this only. Right, and many a times I feel that when we give so much of stress on the correct, so-called correct pronunciation, actually students feel hesitant to even give a start because they feel hesitant, they feel ashamed, and they think, what if I make mistakes, something like this. So, I wonder, why do we emphasize so much on the perfection of pronunciation while on the comparison when these English speaking people, when they try out Gujarati or Hindi, we sometimes see it in the movie, they give so weird a pronunciation of our Hindi words and we actually laugh on them or we say, oh, this is so cute. So why this kind of a double standard? I mean, or is it, I don't know, I mean, how to put it.
Yes, you are right, madam. This is like the mentality of the English teachers, we can say. But what I believe is that the there should not be too much of emphasis to be given on the pronunciation, but otherwise what happens that students they do not, they are very hesitant to learn, or there will be a fear in the mind of the students. So it is okay, we have the Indian pronunciation is fine, because we are not learning English as a first language, it is our second language. So obviously we cannot master the pronunciation, but like the structure should be correct. So in the initial phases we should focus much on the structure of the language and the grammar part, so later on we can focus on the pronunciation. So this is what my understanding.
Okay, thank you, Chirag. We have one question. Sir, can we get any reference for the words borrowed from different languages like French, Arabic, Sanskrit, or Hindi? Like, example, he has given alcohol, shampoo, cutlery. Some questions are asked from this point of view. I mean, Abu Bakr is asking, like, we might have questions in net or set on this basis. So, can you guide something on that?
Yes, there is one book actually, Indianization of English by Subba Rao. Okay, so that book can be very much helpful right now, because there can be so many words and I cannot give you the examples particularly from the different languages, but you can refer that book if you are interested to explore this topic, Indianization of English by Subba Rao. That book can be helpful.
Okay, thank you. I hope you got your answer. So
Yes,
now yes, do we
Nitin sir
have
is
more
saying that
queries? Yes.
fluency is more important than accuracy. Yes,
Yes.
Ravindra sir is saying that being a professor of English, a teacher must pronounce rightly. Yes, sir, you are right, very much right. So here, see, the question that came from the Kamal Didi, which was like, as a teacher, it is our duty, or I mean, not duty, but we must be aware about the right pronunciation. Otherwise, if we are not clear, how can we teach our students? But the thing is that, like, we should not, be very much conscious about the pronunciation while teaching to the students. Otherwise, the thing is that the students will not come out from their comfort zone. They will feel like, that in the beginning itself, they will feel like this is very difficult to learn, and there will be a kind of fear among the students that English is very difficult. And even we observe that many of our students, when those who are teaching in BA and BCom, they might be knowing that the passing ratio, even in the compulsory English, so many students fail. So that was actually the topic, I think so.
Yes, even I mean, because they never start speaking it, it happens many a time. Then even after getting a master degree from English, they are not actually fluent in speaking the language. So maybe, I mean, if we just give them a push that, okay, it's fine to make a mistake in the beginning, then it might be helpful for them to get a start, and then gradually, with the practice, they might expertise a kind of, standard pronunciation that is easy to understand for everyone.
Right. Hmm.
Okay. Do we have any more queries with along with the session, or something that you need to add up?
Am I audible, ma'am?
Yes,
Hello.
yes, sir. Yes, Ravindra.
Uh, Kamal, ma'am, as you said that we students sometimes hesitate for
Yes,
speaking right English. So what is my experience says, Chirag sir, we are in contact.
Yes,
Uh,
yes.
they always think that they are being judged. It is not a problem that they speak English wrongly, or they have a problem like a grammar problem. And I have been in this field since 2011. So I have come across with almost 3,000 students, ma'am, in these 10 years. So they have only one thing in their mind, that they are being judged by someone else. So
yes,
if we make sure that they are not being judged, then they have a good fluency. Once we have to clear in our mind that whatever we speak, right or wrong, it's okay. Just we have to speak.
yes,
So they have
Sir,
the, yes sir.
hmm.
Yes sir, you
Yes,
continue.
please.
So they have a wrong concept in their mind that they are being judged. That's why they are speaking wrongly. Even some professor teachers I have seen there. Actually, we are not habitual to this language all the way. Okay, we
yes,
have to speak in the class or with the student or with the professor. Otherwise, we speak in our mother tongue or Hindi. So thing is that even sometimes we feel that we are being judged, so we should not make mistake. Okay, mistakes are only made for me mistake. So thing
yes,
is that
true.
that is the thing,
Actually,
ma'am.
the more conscious we are of not making the mistake, the more we do. So,
Yeah,
yes, I
of
mean,
course.
you are actually absolutely right.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Even I agree with what Ravindra sir has said. Even like, see, language actually cannot be taught. We cannot teach language, but we can learn language only. And as a teacher, we have to play the role of facilitator. We
Of
just
course,
have
Yes,
to guide student instead of teaching the language.
of
That
course,
is what I believe, I think.
of course, you are right.
yes, yes. Actually, just like that saying, you can take a horse to the water, but you can't make it drink. The
Yes,
Hmm.
same,
yes,
you can just guide them to do the things. I mean, how they may, I mean, take the way, but then obviously they will have to walk on it, and the more or the better they do, they will excel it. So I
of
mean,
course.
yes. Thank you, Ravindra, for adding up such a nice thing.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank
Do
you so much.
Yes. Do we have anyone else who want to add up with this, or with anything they had in their mind? Okay, it seems that we have no more questions, and no more suggestions or add up the things. Then I think we call up the day over here, and we end up the session.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, Chirag. Right, I mean, sorry, Dr. Chirag. Right, I mean, say that, I mean, it was actually a quite fruitful session, and we enjoyed a lot with so much of information, right? And the journey of how English started, I mean, introduced in India with a specific purpose, but now it has turned out to be a complete different thing that needs to be learned out for a different purpose. Thank you very
Hmm.
much for the session, and thank you very much everyone for attending. We see you again on the next session, that would be on Wednesday. See you all.
Okay, bye bye. Okay.